Okay, hi everybody. Liz McFadden with Novella Brandhouse, and I am here today with Jim Rothfork with Trailblaze Media, and we're going to be talking about e-commerce. And because so many people are going from offline to online, I think a lot of brick and mortars, maybe this was something that was on their radar, but obviously given everything with COVID-19 disruption, that's changed a lot of things for people. They've had to figure out basically how to get their product to market otherwise. So just a quick introduction to Jim. Trailblaze Media is actually, they actually office with us at Novella, and they are one of our strategic partners. So we work with them on e-commerce and digital marketing. And actually, this is something that Jim and I have been talking about doing for a while. And then here a couple weeks ago, we said, okay, we need to really get on this because people probably need this information. There's tons more information that we're going to talk about today. We're really going to just talk about almost the kind of the five things, the five first things that you probably need to be thinking about or considering when you decide to develop an e-commerce platform for your store. So that's what we'll talk about today. And at the end, we'll let you know how to get in touch with Jim to for more questions and to build an e-commerce site. So again, Jim is with me today with
Hey
Trailblaze
everyone.
Media. Hey, and you guys have worked with Tivol, Kate and Laurel, in addition to obviously working with us on our
Yeah,
client projects. And this is, I love it. On your website, it says e-commerce experiences that lead people to brands they'll love. I love that because I feel like it totally says e-commerce, but also the digital marketing aspect, which that's the very last question we'll talk about is digital marketing. But just tell us a little bit more about you and Trailblaze.
yeah, absolutely. So I started Trailblaze about 4 years ago, and it's kind of bonkers how I got started. In that, like, I had a previous profession in architecture, but I myself was trying to launch an online brand for men's lifestyle products. So things like furniture, accessories, clothing, things like that. And I had to figure out how to launch my own e-commerce business without ever having built an e-commerce website. So previously, I had a little bit of like web experience, like I played around on WordPress, but I started from the very exact spot that probably a lot of you are starting at, where you're kind of like trying to figure out the platform and figure out the logistics and things that you need to take into account when you're trying to launch an online store. So I did that, and that's where I got started in Shopify. And I realized that I liked building e-commerce brands for other people and kind of the logistics around that and the web presence around it more than I liked running a retail business myself from a day-to-day perspective. So I've been doing that for about 4 years, and that's grown into really three distinct areas that we focus on. The first is kind of the starting one, which is we help people design and build e-commerce websites. The second one is we help people market those e-commerce websites, particularly on Facebook, Instagram, and Google. And we really call that paid acquisition. So most of the merchants that we're working with in that capacity have an online store that's up and running, and they need to help figure out how to capture more sales, resonate with an audience on Facebook or Instagram, or get found on Google. And the third area of business is kind of what we call like our studio. And that's all of our internal projects where we create digital products for Shopify that other merchants can then purchase. And the primary example of that is a Shopify theme that we have on the theme store. So we're working in three different areas where we're helping merchants build sites, we're helping them market them, and then we're figuring out how to build Shopify themes that are broadly applicable to lots of different merchant needs, so that you can have a good experience on something like Shopify and get up and running. So that's kind of the 30,000-foot view.
Well, that was a really good intro. Okay, so I think let's just start with what is the benefit of creating an online store now?
Right now, yeah. So I think the really obvious benefit is it creates another sales channel, right? So the world is kind of a scary place right now. Things are changing really rapidly. There are a lot of businesses that have brick and mortar stores that can't operate out of those locations right now. And so there is the built-in opportunity in that, if one sales channel, i.e. your brick and mortar establishment, has, kind of temporarily been suspended in some way, shape, or form, then online is another sales channel where you can kind of try and reclaim some of that. So I think that's the most obvious. And I think that's the thing that we hear the most when we're talking to merchants who are starting new stores. I think the other really good benefit is you're we're in a space where I think we're all kind of stuck at home in some capacity, and so there's a little bit more time to experiment, right? Like one of the things that we see with a lot of merchants, particularly people who have brick and mortar establishments, is like, I don't have time to build an online store, right? Or focus that energy around all the things that need to be done, like product photography and product catalogs and things like that. But because these other areas of business have kind of like slowed down, you can fill some of that with, okay, how do you start to make some inroads in building an online store, even if you aren't launching it right now, right? Even if it's just you have the opportunity to set aside some time to work on it. So that's one. And I think the last one is the opportunity to experiment and reach people that maybe would have been harder to reach previously. So that might be, especially in like the fashion world or the boutique world, if people were only discovering you because you were in a local marketplace, well, now you have kind of a built-in reason to try and be discovered online. And more people are online right now, trying to fill their downtime with going online and shopping and finding new things. So I think those are the three big
Yeah.
ones.
Yeah. I think the other thing I would add to that would be, if you are a scaling company, and we primarily work with companies that are scaling or they're
Yeah,
established and their world has been disrupted somehow, so they have to rebrand. But especially
totally.
if you're trying to scale, maybe this is a way that get with your current team or your kind of current resources, you can find another revenue source or
Yeah,
build something, right? So like, again, I think all the things that you were saying, it just like this sort of opportunity or what we're living in right now sort of forces you to do this.
absolutely.
But it could definitely down the road be a whole other revenue source for you or an additional source.
And I think that's probably the most important consideration or thing that I would stress to anyone, considering, okay, I want to get online, would be to try and, it, it sounds nuts, but it's like remove some of the pressure that like it's going to become a revenue source immediately, and think about it as like a time to set aside bandwidth to work on this stuff so that it becomes a tool to help you scale over time. And so I would say, I always caution people, it's not something that's going to turn on overnight or immediately. There's going to be a ramp up process, right, to that scaling. But the thing about scaling is you've got to do it at some point, and we're in a place now where maybe now is a good time to set aside that bandwidth to focus on some of those things.
Right. And a lot of business experts are saying that you can't, stop going. You've got to be planning because eventually this will be over and the businesses that survive on the other side are going to be the ones that planned for when things got back to quote unquote normal, whatever that might look like. Yeah. Okay. So our next question is, what are the top three, or if you have to expand it to five, but what are the top three things that businesses should consider or think about before actually building out that online store?
Okay. Um, so I might give you four,
Okay.
and I'll try and give you these in like priority of like if I were doing this again or
Right. Because I think people think, oh, I'm just going to like hop on and like buy a
yeah,
theme, but
right,
obviously there's planning or thinking
right.
that you need to do before that.
So I think the first thing, the like most important thing, is to be really realistic about the resources you have available right now or over the next, let's say, 30 days to work on an initiative like this. And resources, when I say resources, that could mean, do you have other people on your team who maybe have a little bit of free time or a little bit more time to help with something like a product catalog, right? Or product photography or content for the website, right? Resources may also be budget, right? And I think the resource, thinking about the resources you have available are really, really important because it kind of sets the stage for what you can expect the timeline to look like, how stressful it might all be, and how you kind of go down that road. So, the decision is totally different if you want to hire a freelancer or an agency to help you build out that site in this time, Or if you're saying, okay, no, we don't have the resources to pay someone or an agency, maybe we can pay a freelancer, or maybe maybe you don't have the budget to do either of those things. So really you're going to have to rally your own team internally, right? So I think really thinking about the resources you have available for a big project like this is probably the most important thing. Because again, if I were building it and I was looking at it, I'd say, okay, either I can hire someone or I can't hire someone. And if I can't hire someone, now I've really got to figure out what are all the parts and pieces that me and my team are going to have to do internally and really be effective with the help that we look for outside. So that's the first one. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally makes sense.
I think the second one, and the second one is one that we run into with a lot of merchants, and that is trying to get some clarity about like what is the business objective you're after with this website. That might sound like a no-brainer because most people's business objective is to scale or generate revenue, right? But I'm talking about something a little bit like one or two levels removed from that, and that is like we want to generate more subscriptions for our first-time subscriptions for our products, or we want to generate more conversation around our products on social media so we can generate a bigger following on social media so that 1 month from now, maybe when things are returning to normal, we've got a built-in following that we've invested in, right? Yes, more sales would be great. So that's kind of one way to look at that. And the other is like, what is the objective of the site, right? And that changes whether you're like, you could be a mattress company who doesn't sell a unique set of mattresses, right? And it's not like a Casper mattress, right? Like maybe you're a mattress store and you're trying to get online now. And you've got the realization that like you've got very similar products to everyone else who has a mattress store, right? So you really have to think about like, what are you trying to achieve with the store? Are you trying to generate more people calling or inquiring? Are you trying to build a relationship? Or you could be a subscription company who was operating previously, before the COVID stuff came up. And now you're thinking, okay, now we really want to scale because we think people are going to be buying these products. So just getting really crystal clear about what is the business objective around the website other than just revenue, because everyone wants more revenue.
Right. And I think that's really good about help setting your expectations too.
Yeah,
Being really clear on
absolutely.
your objective.
Yeah, I mean, because and Liz, we were kind of chatting about this offline, but the most common thing we'll see is somebody who comes in and they sell one-off products, but they also sell a subscription for those products, right? So like I'll use the example of a supplement company. It's one that I see a lot. Supplements or nootropics.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these sites, you can go on and buy a one-off product, get a shipment, be done. But a lot of these companies are also selling subscription products, right? And so if you're in that kind of mindset, it really helps to be clear on, are we focusing on one-off sales or are we focusing on subscription sales? And chances are you can't do both of those things in equal measure at the same time, right? So being really clear about like, hey, we want to focus on our subscription business during this time period. And that's really the driver. So maybe that's a better example.
No, that's great. That's perfect. All right. What's the third thing people need to be
Yeah.
considering, right?
I think I'm going to kind of bundle these two together. And one is really hard in some ways to speak to because it's so specific, but I would say to start thinking about what your unique selling, like, or what your unique position in the market is.
Mm-hmm.
And likewise, if you're going online right now and you don't have a presence online, what is the like minimum viable product that you can launch with, right? So let's say you're a women's boutique who does not have an online store and your stores are now closed and you're trying to figure out, okay, I need to get online. So if I'm a women's boutique, to kind of apply that framework, I'd say you're going to be going onto a marketplace that is flooded with women's apparel, just
Right.
flooded all over the place, right? And so as a business owner, you have to think about like, okay, we're going to go online, and how do we stand out from all these other businesses who are selling women's apparel, right? And one example of how a brand might do that is to say, well, maybe what we can do to distinguish ourselves is offer like a mini style consultation over video, right? Nobody can come in, but like maybe you can get style consultation through video, and if you use that service, you get a discount on the store, and your first order ships for free or something like that, right?
Right.
That's a way to make yourself stand out, maybe a little bit more than some of these other businesses that are just drop shipping products from China or somewhere else, and
Mhm.
really kind of drive that relationship. Um, and then kind of to dovetail on top of that is, um, it's very likely that when you launch, or when you're getting ready to launch, you won't be launching with doing every single thing that you want to do with your online store. So, maybe if you're thinking about that, it's like, get if I'm a women's boutique and let's say I have 500 SKUs in my store normally, or 2,000, right? It's probably closer to 3,000. I have to think about like, okay, well, um, maybe we launch with a subset, because that's going to reduce the amount of work that we have to do over this time period. So maybe we look and see what our 1 to 200 most popular items in store might be, or what we think might be the most unique online. And let's start with those 1 to 200 products on day one of our launch, and figure out, okay, that's our minimum viable version of our store. So you get online, people can start finding you, and then figure out over the next few weeks or next few months, how do you continue to add to that, inventory that you have online. So I mean, I think those are the things those two things in particular apply at all times. And
Mhm.
for every merchant that we work with, every merchant that I talk to, it's like, what do you think is going to make you stand out in a very saturated market, which is the online world?
Mhm.
And what is the minimum version of what you can launch with and feel good and put yourself in a position to start testing,
And to
the
be
reception.
successful with that, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think, just to kind of like really like talk about that point maybe ad nauseum, is like, if you think about the MVP of your store, or the starting point of your store, it's not the final spot that your store, your brand is going to, embody online. But
Mhm.
what it does is it helps you get to the goal without over analyzing every single thing along the way. Because the
Right.
thing that I see most commonly with merchants is they're like, it's not perfect, it's not perfect, it's not perfect, so I can't launch yet. And then they get eight months down the road and they still haven't launched because it's not perfect. Well,
Right.
newsflash, it's never perfect, right?
Right.
Nothing is ever perfect. So figure out what that minimum state is that will let you start testing reception to your products, generating conversation with shoppers, and just getting a feel for the online, e-commerce world, or managing a store, and then go from there. So be really clear about that.
Yeah. Well, no, I think those are great. And I love that. I mean, because obviously and this client shall remain nameless, but we worked on a project together where a client they had really grand ideas about what they were going to launch with. And they ended up
Yeah.
having to roll that back more or less because things weren't quite ready yet. And so had they really probably been a little bit more realistic at the outset of what the site was going to look like when they launched, probably could have obviously ease some frustrations when they were trying to
Yeah.
launch and they didn't have everything. But I think too that just from a marketing perspective, if you kind of say, like you were saying, if you start out with like, okay, here's what we're launching with, here's what's going to be available online, that almost gives you kind of this like, because I love to use scarcity marketing, like,
Hmm.
there's only so much available. And so you can kind of start out with that, or just
Yeah,
almost make it special of what's
absolutely.
available online. So there's kind of that whole aspect too. But most importantly, it just makes it more manageable when you're trying to get something launched, just to start with what's really doable.
Yeah, and I mean, I can't overstate how important that is to like look at your business from that perspective and say like, what can I achieve in this time successfully, even if it's not everything that I want it to be. Go ahead and take those other things and build them into your schedule over the coming months as you have more resources. But
Right.
do save yourself, the like trauma of all that stress and saying like, what's the most important thing to test right now? And
Right.
for most of you guys who are probably watching, if you don't have an online store, you've got to figure out how to get an online store account set up with someone like Shopify. You have to figure out how inventory management works. You have to figure out how to ship. You have to figure out how to talk to customers who have bought products. You have to figure out how to take returns, right? So like that makes it sound all really scary. And it's like, keep your footprint as small as possible to test the most important thing for your business, which is probably what makes you unique and what that conversation is like with people who are shopping your products. So
Yeah. Well, and the other thing you talked about was, really how are you being unique? And that obviously goes back to what we do, which is branding. We always talk about what is your unique solve. So I think you
yeah.
make a great point of saying, you're basically that's branding, and
Mm-hmm.
branding, whether you are doing marketing and advertising or thinking about what your logo looks like, all the way to what your first store is going to be. That brand positioning is so important, and really obviously a very important part of taking your store online. Okay, so third question. There are a lot of platforms out there. There's Squarespace, Magenta, is it Magento? Magento, and Shopify.
Yeah,
Obviously, you are a Shopify expert, and when we build e-commerce sites at Novella, we obviously primarily, we work with you guys, and it's in Shopify.
yeah,
So, tell us why Shopify is a good fit, and maybe why it's not a good fit in some
sure.
situations.
Yeah. So I mean, my blanket thing is I'm super biased in a lot of ways because we only work on Shopify. So, you always have to do your own research. Just, when I first started, I was like, what's the difference between Shopify and Magento or Shopify and Squarespace? And you kind of got to do some of that research for yourself to like feel good about the decision. But with that said, I think Shopify is a good solution if you are selling physical products. Um, and the distinction there is, there's a lot of people who might be going to like online coaching or digital subscriptions of products or things like that. Shopify is not a great platform for digital content delivery. It is really good at physical
Mm-hmm.
products. Um, and in that capacity, Shopify is running something right now where you get your first 90 days. They extended their trial period from like 15 days to 90 days. And I think I recently saw another platform called BigCommerce is doing something similar. So you're kind of in a spot where you can try a lot of these things out for an extended period of time. That said, when it comes to Shopify, one of the things that has always given me a lot of faith in it as a platform is the fact that they put the merchants, i.e. you guys, if you're thinking about it, you are the merchant, you're the person selling stuff. Shopify puts the merchant at the very core of their target audience, like who they are serving, as opposed to ourselves as developers, right? We as developers are not Shopify's primary target audience for selling. And I think that's a really big distinction because a platform like Magento, where anything you do, more or less, is very custom. You're going to need a developer to do a lot of things, to maintain a lot of things, to maintain a server, to get us, all those things. It's very developer centric, right? Whereas Shopify is very merchant centric. And the whole goal behind the entire platform is make it easy to sign up for an account, to add product data, to manage that product info, and then make your store look good. So you as the merchant are kind of at the core of everything. So Shopify's focus on what makes your life as a merchant easier is probably one of the biggest strengths of the platform.
Which I think we can't underscore that enough,
No,
because you and I both have been in this world for a long time. And there are a lot of website platforms, even outside of e-commerce, that are not necessarily user friendly. And so,
correct.
the whole goal is for the client or the merchant, but for them to be able to use their platform.
Totally.
And so I think that's a really important piece to Shopify.
Well, I mean, I always say, anecdotally, you take it for what it's worth. But I've worked with prior to Shopify, I worked with, helping people get set up on things like WordPress, and I managed my own little WordPress sites and on teams of people. And I it was only after I got onto Shopify that we started encountering businesses who were like, hey, we have to have a developer has to update everything on our site for us. We have no power to do anything, on platforms like Magento or WordPress, or it's like really convoluted and hard and intimidating. And when we started, the first clients we worked with at Trailblaze were people who were not tech savvy at all, right? When they hired us, they were like, we need a developer because we don't know how to do any of this stuff. And we're like, okay, great. We'll train you on how to manage all this stuff. And we trained these merchants, and they would just go crazy with updates on their site, sometimes to a
Because they felt
disadvantage, right?
empowered,
Like,
probably.
yeah, like they had so much power. And so like there are so many merchants that I worked with over the years on Shopify who previously had no like web experience or content management system experience, which is what Shopify is. It's a content management system. They had no experience on either of those things, or they didn't know how to manage their email newsletters or their website. And then suddenly 2 weeks after launch, they're just, for better or worse, they're editing lots of parts of the site and they're really empowered. And I think that really speaks to Shopify's core of like the merchant is at the front, is at the very core of what Shopify does. And then I think the last little bit is I, you know, they're sort of in a Shopify and BigCommerce and Magento. A lot of those platforms are kind of in an arms race right now to develop their platforms to make it easier for merchants. But I think Shopify has just been so consistent year over year or year after year of of continuously making it easier for you to manage your store. And there's a whole lot of stuff that's coming as of this summer that is going to essentially make it much easier for you, the merchant, to manage your store and switch your theme and update the look and feel of your store without even ever having to use the developers. So from that perspective, I think it's a really good investment. It's worth at least trying it for 90 days and saying like, hey, does this feel good? And then, you've got a platform that is going to stick around. And I think that's the other thing, is it's going to be around. It's a publicly traded company at this point, and they're probably not going anywhere for quite a number of years. So,
Especially with everything that's happening. There's a lot of
yeah,
people
yeah,
getting on. I think the other thing too is that what we've seen, a big difference between say Squarespace and Shopify, is if this is something that you really do eventually plan to scale,
hmm
Shopify is probably better in the long run.
yeah. And I got kind of distracted talking about the
No, but
merchant centric part, but yeah, you're right.
that's a really big piece. But yeah, don't you think? I think it's going to be, in the long run, it's probably something you can better scale than maybe,
Absolutely.
or than Squarespace.
Yeah, and fundamentally, I've worked with merchants who had 2 products on their Shopify store, and we have one merchant that we worked with a few years ago that has 300,000 products on one Shopify
Oh my
store,
gosh.
which is, I mean, to give you the idea of scale there, right? So it's great from that perspective. You don't and thinking about a scaling business, like Shopify doesn't make you worry about things like server hosting. It's all included on Shopify. You don't have to manage that. You don't have to manage plugins or things. So there's a lot of built-in protection there. So from a scaling perspective, it does really well.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that a lot of merchants ask about is like, well, can Shopify support us if we're doing blank? I have personally seen stores that gross or that sell over $1 million in sales every month, and there are stores that are doing quite a bit more than that on Shopify. So it's a really broad range, which is great. And for companies that have really advanced needs, who may have considered something like Magento previously, Shopify does have their own kind of highly customized service where you can be an enterprise client and utilize Shopify and customize a lot of things to your liking and your needs specifically. So it will grow with you over time. And I haven't encountered somebody who's outgrown Shopify yet.
Oh,
So
that's good. Clearly, if somebody
yeah.
has 300,000 SKUs, but
Yeah.
yeah, I love that. I love that. Okay. So here's my last question. So once the store is live, I think what you said it a little bit earlier, and we said we would kind of talk about this. The other piece of what you guys do with the digital marketing, but I think a lot of times people think I'm going to put my store out there and it's going to go gangbusters. Or let's say I'm already a brick and mortar, and so I already have an email list, I already have a following. I'm going to put my store up, and then it's like all this pent up buying is going to happen, and that doesn't necessarily most often it does not happen that way.
Right.
So what do people need to keep in mind about how they need to promote this store or marketing? Like what should they be thinking about once this store goes live
Mhm.
about promoting it?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we could spend hours talking
Yes,
about,
I
but I think the most, the I think the biggest thing is generating dialogue with people who are shopping or might be shopping or might be a good, target customer for you. And different businesses, can define that in different ways. So that might be starting to reach out to that email list on a regular basis, not annoyingly like, every day of the week, but like maybe once a week consistently.
Right.
Posting on Instagram, posting on Facebook. And I would say pick one channel that you really want to figure out how to own, or not own, but like get really comfortable publishing to over the next 1 or 2 months. Without getting too bogged down about, oh, well, we don't look super polished yet, or it doesn't look cohesive. One of the brands that we worked with when they were first starting is a company called iJust, and they put out they create blue light blocking screen protectors for Apple devices primarily. And when they got started, they had a nice kind of brand vibe, and but they weren't posting a whole lot on Instagram, and the posts that they were making were kind of all over at the start, but they couldn't tackle both of those things at the same time. They first had to get comfortable with like posting regularly to Instagram to figure out what are they talking about on a regular basis? How do they tap into things that people want to hear about? And then they could tackle, okay, let's start to refine this, right? And let's create a strategy around how everything looks. So I think the biggest thing is figure out a channel that you can get really comfortable publishing to, so that you can start dialogue. And that, if that's Facebook or Instagram, figure out how to post, figure out how to get comfortable doing Facebook Live events or Instagram TV events, and do that on a regular basis, because the more you create those opportunities for people to find you via posting, whether that's video or just regular posts, the more people can potentially discover your brand online and generate that dialogue.
Yeah. Well, and I think
And
the
then,
next step to that, and you're probably going to talk about this, is is to start doing some sort of paid ads through Facebook and
yeah.
Instagram. And I think what's really important, again, you've got to already have content
Mhm.
on those channels, because
Mhm.
people will be driven to those channels. And if it's very lackluster, or you haven't really posted anything, or you aren't really, we always say post with purpose. So if you haven't
Right.
really posted anything that could be useful and helpful to people, um, it's this just doesn't
Yeah.
do a lot.
I mean, paid ads are a really good way to go, and you can experiment with like $100 a week, or just to kind of see what sort of activity you get. But Liz, to your point, like organic content that you create that are not paid ads will start to give you some insight on like how are people responding to that content? Are they liking it? Are they engaging with it? And when we're working with somebody for a paid acquisition campaign, one of the first things that we do on Facebook and Instagram is we take a look at the posts that you, the merchant or the brand, have made to see what resonates with people. So we can, do targeting around that, or we can repurpose some of that organic content to be ads, right? Like some of the most successful ad campaigns that we've run have been with merchants who very regularly engaged with their audience on a weekly or daily basis on social. Like social is a little bit different than email, right? You can post daily on Facebook and
Right.
Instagram without really annoying people. But some of the most successful campaigns we've run have been on the backs of what was originally organic content that got a lot of engagement, and therefore we could leverage the targeting around it and make our ads that much more successful. So I think, first step is get super comfortable generating content in, one platform. And then, maybe, shortly after that, say, okay, let's set aside $100 a week just
Mhm.
to kind of test it. Um, so that if you get to the point where you want to hire someone like us, with Novella to come in, you've got a little bit of a sense of what's been effective already, or how far your money goes or does not go in your
Right.
marketplace. That's
And
the
you've
big
already
thing.
been authentic about being on that platform and
Yeah,
engaging with your audience in a real way, which is really,
absolutely.
really important. And I think if somebody is thinking about doing any kind of Facebook or Instagram advertising right now, I'm sure, Jim, you can echo this. You've probably seen the same reports I have and talked to different people that a lot of companies pulled their advertising either out or way down when
Yeah,
this all happened 2 or 3 weeks ago. And understandably so. I think most companies are, feeling like they need to hold on to cash. However, there's a lot of opportunity out there
yeah,
right now on those platforms because that's where people are right now. I mean,
yeah.
consumers and people, and even if you're B2B, I mean,
We're
that's where
all
people
here. We're all here on our phones, right? I have to put my phone away when I'm doing work now, so I'm
I
not checking
know.
it constantly. But like, it is the biggest. I mean, I think that's a really big missed opportunity. And I want to like specify, like, look, we are all in a place right now where we have cash concerns and we're trying to figure out how cash flow works, and we're all trying to figure out how to be sensitive to what's happening, right? So like, you don't want to like hit people over the head with your ads at a time when, like, for a lot of people it feels like a really unsure time, right? But you can be sensitive to that and still figure out, like, how do we maintain, the momentum we've got.
Right.
How do you alter your message maybe? And that's a good plug for you guys, right? Like, that's something that I think you guys would excel at, is to say, okay, look, we've got these ad campaigns, how do we modify this message so that we're not registering as totally insensitive or like our heads in the sand, right? And like, but
Right.
like still continue that conversation.
And I think
Now's not the time to to let off.
no, it really isn't. There's probably a lot of opportunity. Again, not to be opportunistic, but just
No,
recognize that there's some opportunity there and you can
totally.
still get out there. And that's what we've been, counseling our clients with, and what we've been talking about on social is right now it's really important to be, make sure you're being helpful and you're offering what your product offering right now is meeting the needs of where people are or businesses
Mhm.
are right now. And then just making sure that messaging, acknowledges what's going on in our reality. But
Yeah,
otherwise, if you do those things and you're real and authentic about it, which we always, tell people they need to do that, then it can come off, in a good way,
hmm,
and you can, potentially grow your business, or if anything, you're building awareness, which really right now is really important, because again, we'll come out on the other side of this and you don't want to be a brand that just kind of didn't do anything and got out of the conversation, and
right.
finally, you're finding yourself on the sidelines at that point.
Yeah,
um okay, so I mean, obviously we could talk for so long about this, but I think this is a really good introduction, kind of gives people an idea of what they need to be thinking about going into creating an online store, what's involved in that, and how to approach it. So all really helpful things. Okay, so how can they contact you, and how can they get your theme?
yeah. Our website's trailblazemedia.com. Easiest way to contact me is likely through email at this point. So my email is jim@trailblazemedia.com. Our theme is available on Shopify's theme store, along with, I think, about 56 other themes. So let's see. Usually I just Google this, but it's Shopify theme store. Okay, so the address is themes.shopify.com. And I think that's a really good starting point. Even if you're like, I don't know about Shopify, I've heard things. It's like, go take a look at themes.shopify.com. gives you a nice, intro to the theme store. There are free themes there that you can try out. And then all of the themes that are premium themes that you have to pay for, they come with a free trial. So you can install them, you can set them up, you can get a feel for it. But while you're there, if you're interested in checking out one of our themes, you can search for the theme called Loft. So that's one of our themes. Another theme that we worked on is called Avenue. And they both have kind of different markets. Avenue is more really big catalog merchants. So we've seen a lot of like grocery chains that are going online and going digital orders have been taking a look at Avenue. And Loft is a little bit more geared towards like mid-sized merchants who, are maybe in the apparel or art kind of fields, just kind of more high-end type stuff. But yeah, just check out Loft and Avenue on the theme store. And Liz, I think you and I have talked about this. It's like we're in kind of a weird place. We don't know what's happening over the next few weeks. We can be positive. We're trying to all be positive about this. And I would just say, one of the things that me and my team at Trailblaze is trying to do is to say, look, if you're in a place where you need a little bit of guidance, or you just want to like talk to someone for 15 or 20 minutes and throw ideas off the wall, and even if you're not trying to hire someone, but you want to like get some feedback, we're super willing to have those conversations, just as like we're all kind of in this together. We're all sort of trying to figure out what the world looks like. And so, we're always happy to, have informal conversations and, be a sounding board for you if you're trying to figure out how to get online or focus on improving your business.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but I'd say Jim at trailblazemedia.com, or just going to our website and filling out our contact form on the homepage is